I've always lived by one simple rule: live and let live. My farm isn't just a piece of land. It's a legacy, passed down through 5 generations of hard work, sacrifice, and love. Every morning, I'd stand on my porch with the sun rising, over the wheat fields, the scent of damp earth in the air, and feel at peace. But that peace was about to be shattered by a force I never saw coming: Karen Whitmore, president of the nearby HOA. She had an obsession with order, with perfection, started with a complaint about the color of my barn, and spiraled into a full-blown war. This wasn't just about a barn anymore. It was about my land, my family's history, and my right to live the way I always had. Karen didn't know it yet, but I wasn't the kind of man to back down. Not when it came to protecting what's mine. This was about to become a fight for survival. About 5 years ago, they built Crestwood Estates right up against my property line. Rows of identical beige houses, manicured lawns, and an HOA run-by. You guessed it, Karen. She's one of those people who probably irons her socks and alphabetizes her spice rack. A woman with an overinflated sense of power, stuffed into a beige pantsuit, on a mission to enforce soul-crushing order. To her, anything outside her, picture-perfect vision was a problem, and apparently my farm was public enemy number 1. The first time she came to my porch, I was sipping my morning coffee. Steam curling into the crisp air, she marched up my gravel driveway like the very sight of it offended her, clipboard in hand. Smile tight as a fishing line. "You must be Mr. Mitchell," she said, voice sharp like rusty shears. "That's me," I replied. "And you are Karen Whitmore, president of Crestwood Estates HOA," she said, like it meant something. "I wanted to talk about your property." I raised an eyebrow. "Go on. Your farm borders our community, and I'm sure you understand. Property values are fragile," she said, her eyes narrowing. "We've received complaints about noise, smell, and overall visual impact. We think your property could use a few adjustments." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Adjustments?" She gestured toward my old red barn. "That barn, it's quite vivid. Perhaps something more neutral. And the rooster, some residents find it disruptive." I stared at her. "You want me to repaint a 60-year-old barn and silence a rooster? Because your neighbors moved next to a farm and don't like country sounds?" Her smile stiffened. "Mr. Mitchell, change is never easy, but this is in everyone's best interest." I stood up and stretched. "Ms. Whitmore, I appreciate the visit, but my farm's not in your HOA. I don't answer to you, and neither does my barn. Or my rooster." Her eyes turned cold. "We'll see about that," she hissed before storming off. That's when the harassment began. Letters, official-looking, demanding I fix violations that didn't apply to me. County calls, complaints about tractor noise and farm smells. Nothing stuck, but it was constant, exhausting. A few weeks later, she showed up again, this time with 2 HOA board members. I was mending a fence, the smell of cedar and sweat in the air. You, again," I said, wiping my hands on a rag. Karen sighed theatrically. "Mr. Mitchell, we hoped to resolve this civilly, but your defiance is becoming an issue." "My defiance?" I folded my arms. "You mean refusing to bow to your ridiculous demands over land that's mine?" She ignored me, thrusting papers in my face. "As per HOA regulations." "I'm not in your HOA," I said, pushing the papers back. She didn't stop. "All properties within visual range of Crestwood must comply with community aesthetic standards. We're prepared to escalate if needed." One of her lackeys, a weaselly guy with thick glasses, added, "We've contacted the county. If your farm is found in violation, you could face serious fines." I wasn't worried about zoning. I knew my farm was solid, but people like Karen, they don't stop. They dig, and they keep digging, until they find something, or make something up. Go ahead, I said, my voice low, but if anyone from your little club steps foot on my land again, I'll be calling Sheriff Tom Caldwell for trespassing. He's an old family friend. Her expression flickered. Surprise, maybe annoyance. But she quickly composed herself. You're making this difficult, Mr. Mitchell. No, I said, stepping in, casting a shadow across her clipboard. I think you are. I turned and walked away, leaving them standing there fuming. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. The opening salvo. A few days later, I was out in the west pasture checking on a newborn calf when I heard it, the unmistakable roar of a chainsaw. But it wasn't mine, and it was coming from the boundary near Crestwood Estates. My gut dropped. I sprinted through the field, pushing, past a thicket of wild roses, heart pounding, and what I saw stopped me cold. A crew of workers, all in plain uniforms, were hacking down my shrubs and setting posts for a tall, steel-gray fence, an 8-foot monstrosity that looked more like a prison wall than a property divider, and there she was, Karen, clipboard in hand, directing the chaos like some self-appointed queen, her smile smug, too satisfied with herself. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I shouted. The workers froze. One of them nearly dropped his chainsaw. Karen turned slowly, feigning surprise, voice dripping with fake politeness. "Oh, Mr. Mitchell, good afternoon. We're just implementing some community improvements. This new fence will enhance the visual harmony of Crestwood Estates and address resident concerns." I was seething. Community improvements? This is my land. You're trespassing, and you've butchered my shrubs. Her smile didn't budge, like arguing with a snake. "Well, Mr. Mitchell, that's a matter of interpretation. After reviewing older survey maps, the community believes the original property lines were imprecise. Since your farm borders our neighborhood, we thought it best to clarify the boundary." "You believe?" I snapped. "You believe you can just walk onto my land and start building a fence based on some fantasy map?" I turned to the workers, who now looked uncomfortable, glancing at Karen. "God, a permit for this? Any legal paperwork allowing you on my property?" One of the younger guys swallowed hard. Ms. Whitmore said the HOA had all the permissions." "She lied," I said flatly, pulling out my phone. I made sure Karen saw the contact name, Sheriff Tom Caldwell. He'll be very interested in this little land grab and trespassing stunt. Chainsaws went quiet. The workers exchanged nervous looks. Karen's smug expression cracked, replaced by barely hidden fury. "There's no need to involve the authorities, Mr. Mitchell," she said, voice suddenly higher, more defensive. "It's a misunderstanding." "Right," I said, still holding the phone. "You misunderstood that this is my damn property. Pack it up now, or the next people you talk to will be in uniform." Karen's glare could have melted steel, but she nodded, signaling the crew. They scrambled, gathering their tools and hauling off the property. "This isn't over, Mitchell," she seethed, voice low and dangerous. "It is for today, Whitmore," I shot back, "and you will be hearing from me. You're bored. And whoever else gave you that brilliant idea. I'll be sending a cease and desist with copies of my legally recorded deeds and survey maps. Touch my land again, and it won't just be Sheriff Tom. It'll be every lawyer I've got on speed dial." She didn't respond, just stormed off, heels digging into the dirt. I stood there watching, the scent of cut wood and diesel hanging in the air. My pulse still racing, the audacity to think they could just take it. That night, I pulled out everything: deeds, survey maps dating back to my great-grandfather, tax records. I made copies of it all. The next morning, I personally delivered a strongly worded cease and desist to the HOA office and to every board member. For a week, silence. But I knew better. Karen was plotting. Then it came. A massive for sale sign appeared in my front pasture, bold letters screaming Mitchell Farms for sale, and just below, another one. That's when the SUV pulled up. I was fuming. "Oh, good morning, Mr. Mitchell," she chirped, like we were old friends. "I see you've noticed the signage. A slight misunderstanding, I'm afraid." I folded my arms, glaring at the mangled for sale signs lying at my feet. A misunderstanding? You're telling me a real estate agency just accidentally put a for sale sign on my land? Her smile faltered. Well, the HOA has been in discussions about acquiring adjacent properties. Perhaps some enthusiastic realtors jumped the gun, assuming your farm was part of the portfolio. Enthusiastic realtors? I stepped closer. Or a manipulative HOA president trying to devalue my property and pressure me into selling. This is fraud, Karen. This is slander of title. She stammered. Now, Mr. Mitchell, let's not be hasty with accusations. Hasty? I pulled out my phone. I can call the State Real Estate Commission. I can call the press, or I can call my lawyer, the one who specializes in HOA bullies. I leaned in. How do you think Crestwood Estates attempts hostile takeover of historic family farm will sound as a headline? For the first time, I saw it, fear flickering in her eyes. There's no need for that. Then you'll call whoever put these signs up, I said, voice steady, and you'll tell them if I see one more sign on my land, I will sue you, the HOA, and the real estate agency for fraud. Are we clear? She nodded, lips tight. Perfectly. Then she turned and hurried to her car. I knew this wasn't over, but I also knew one thing. I couldn't fight this alone forever. That evening, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Mr. Mitchell?" A hesitant voice said. "My name's Linda. I live in Crestwood Estates, and I think I can help you." Linda, a former HOA board member, spilled everything. Karen was fabricating complaints, using names of old residents to file fake grievances with the county. She even tried charging homeowners for her personal legal battles against me. It was gold. Proof of Karen's dirty tactics. Linda promised to send anything she could gather, offering a flicker of hope. Armed with intel, I needed real legal backup. The first lawyer was fine for a cease and desist. But now, this was war. That's how I found Barry Perkins, attorney at law, whose office sat above a laundromat, and whose enthusiasm was terrifying. "Mr. Mitchell," Barry declared, "we shall smite them with the mighty sword of jurisprudence. Didn't need the theatrics, I just needed someone to file the right paperwork." But before Barry got started, I decided it was time to take the fight to them. Karen complained about my rooster? Fine. I bought 5 more from a local poultry auction. By Monday morning, the rooster army of Mitchell Farms announced their presence at exactly 5 a.m. Cock-a-doodle-doos echoed across the fields, straight into the open windows of Crestwood Estates. I stood on my porch, coffee in hand, grinning. It was gloriously obnoxious. Next, I tackled her visual eyesore complaint. I planted a wall of sunflowers along the property line. Bright, towering golden blooms completely blocked their view. Cheerful, legal, brilliant. Then came the final stroke of genius, Farmers' Fun Day. Linda had told me Karen was painting me as a reclusive nuisance, so I flipped the script. I advertised a full-on community event, hay rides, petting zoo, fresh produce live music. The turnout, huge. Families swarmed my farm in droves, and, as expected, Karen showed up. Her face was a mask of rage. "This is completely unacceptable," she shrieked, shouting over the music. "You can't just turn your farm into a carnival." I smiled calmly. "Actually, Miss Whitmore, I can. It's called agritourism, perfectly legal under county zoning." I gestured to the crowd. "In fact, I'm thinking about making it a weekly thing. Great for the local economy," she sputtered, speechless for once. then stormed off, muttering something about imminent board action. But with each passing day, Karen's grip slipped further, and the universe, it has a twisted sense of humor and a flair for the dramatic. Just a few weeks after the Farmers' Fun Day, the skies opened up. Not just rain, a full-blown Midwest supercell thunderstorm, the kind that turns day into night, where the wind howls like a banshee and rain pours. In solid sheets, the power went out across the county. Trees groaned, branches snapped like gunfire. I was out in the barn, securing the animals, when I heard. The pressure in the air was immense, like the storm itself was pushing against my eardrums. The old timbers around me creaked and groaned, but they held strong. My grandfather built this barn to withstand anything. Then, crack, a sound like the sky itself splitting open, followed by a deep, shuddering thud that vibrated through the barn floor. I rushed to the doors. An ancient oak, one that had stood right on the border between my land and Crestwood, had just been obliterated by a lightning strike. The tree, older than anyone still living, had split in half, and now it lay across the property line, a splintered behemoth of soaked bark and shattered limbs. One side had crushed a section of Crestwood's pristine white vinyl fence. The other half lay, sprawled across my pasture like a fallen titan. Rain lashed everything. Visibility was near zero. And then I saw her, Karen, wading through the storm, hair plastered to her head, soaked to the bone, still clutching that damn clipboard, now a soggy mess. "Mitchell," she screamed over the wind, her fingers shaking, as she pointed at the downed oak. "Your negligence. This tree was on your property. It's damaged HOA land. You'll be held liable for all the repairs." Even in the middle of a tempest, her audacity was breathtaking. "My negligence," I shouted, stepping into the downpour. Rain soaked me instantly, drenching every inch. "It was struck by lightning, Karen. An act of God, unless you plan on suing him, too." We stood there, a few yards apart, the fallen tree between us. Wind, howling, rain, blinding. The perfect, chaotic backdrop for this ridiculous war. "This is a hazard," she shrieked, picking her way along the ruined fence. "Your unkempt property is a menace." And then, another section of the shattered oak, weakened and groaning, gave way. Crack, crash. It wasn't as massive as the first, but it was big enough. It hit the ground right where Karen was about to step, mud and splinters flying, bark and branches exploding into debris. She shrieked, stumbled back, and landed flat on her back in the mud. Her clipboard went flying. For a moment, we just stared at each other, rain pelting down, wind screaming through the trees. Even nature seemed to be telling her, "Back the hell off." "Maybe," I yelled. "You should go home, Karen, before something else unkempt falls on you." She sat there, sputtering, her usual icy composure shattered by the storm and the near-death reality check. This felt like a turning point. The storm passed, eventually. It left behind a swamp of mud and debris. And of course, Karen being Karen, she tried to spin the whole thing. She claimed my poorly maintained property posed a danger to Crestwood, tried to rally the HOA against me over the fallen tree. But Linda told me the truth. Residents were more disturbed by Karen running around, in a lightning storm screaming about property lines than the tree itself. Her obsession was starting to show cracks, and people were noticing. Then, she escalated again. I started seeing a beat-up sedan parked at odd hours near the road, then a drone buzzing low over my back fields. A few days later, I caught him, some scruffy-looking guy, camera in hand, sneaking around my compost pile. "Lost, pal?" I called out. He jumped like I'd set off a firecracker, mumbled something about property surveys, and scurried off like a rat in daylight. That was the last straw. "She's using HOA funds to hire a PI to spy on you, Jake," Linda fumed over the phone. This has to stop. We're organizing. We're calling for an emergency HOA meeting. The HOA rebels, as I'd started calling them, had been busy. Greg, a retired veteran, had been quietly documenting every incident. Karen's erratic behavior, her threats, her misuse of authority. And Maria, a quiet, meticulous accountant, had uncovered discrepancies in the HOA's financial records, consulting fees, legal expenses, all suspiciously timed with Karen's vendetta against me. They were ready, and so was I. Armed with Linda's intel, photos of the PI, and a righteous fire in my chest, I made a decision. I was going to crash that meeting, and I wasn't. Going alone, I picked up the phone and called Barry. "Barry," I said, "big HOA meeting. I need you there. Look official. Maybe bring a briefcase." "A briefcase?" he boomed. "Splendid. I shall prepare. The most briefcase-like briefcase. Presentation. God help us all." The Crestwood Estates Community Center was packed, buzzing with tension. Normally, these HOA meetings were dull affairs, but tonight it was standing room only. Barry trotted beside me, clutching a battered briefcase like it held the secrets to the universe. Karen sat at the head table, eyes locked on me, her glare sharp enough to draw blood. "Mr. Mitchell," she said coldly, "this is a private meeting for Crestwood residents. You're trespassing." I didn't flinch. I believe I have a vested interest, considering your HOA's harassment, land theft attempts, defamation, and illegal surveillance of me. Before she could snap back, someone unexpected spoke up. Richard, the usually silent HOA president. "Maybe," he said slowly, "we should hear him out." And then the HOA rebels made their move. Greg stood tall, voice firm and clear. Karen used HOA funds for personal vendettas. She faked complaints, tried to charge homeowners for legal fees related to Mitchell, and even hired a private investigator. Linda added, "We have proof, emails, bank discrepancies." She lied to the board. She lied to all of us. Karen's face turned crimson. She shot up, screeching, "These are lies." "Are they?" I asked, stepping forward. I held up a photo. "This man was on my property, paid by your HOA, spying on my farm." Then I slapped down a cease and desist letter. "This," I said, "is a legal document that your HOA ignored." The room exploded into chaos. Barry, God bless him, saw his moment. He cleared his throat dramatically. "Ahem, this is blatant, tortious interference and a malfeasance of official—" "Dumb," Karen smirked, pouncing. "Exactly. He doesn't even know what he's talking about." Barry fumbled with his papers, and in perfect comedic timing, one sheet slid across the table, right into Richard's hands. Richard picked it up. "Barry," he said, brow furrowing. "What is this?" Barry stammered. Just some old notes about a runaway llama case." Richard kept reading. "This is an internal HOA memo, signed by Karen, approving payment to Whitmore Investigative Services, her brother-in-law's PI firm, using funds from the landscaping budget, and it's dated before board approval." The room went silent. Karen's face went white. Barry, bless his messy, brilliant soul, had just accidentally uncovered embezzlement and fraud. Richard looked up coldly. "Well, Karen, care to explain this beautification expense?" Opened her mouth, but no words came. And just like that, the board voted unanimously to remove her. No debate, no delay. Her reign was over. She tried to protest, but the room wasn't listening anymore. The queen had fallen. Not by sword or scandal, but by a farmer, a few brave neighbors, and a lawyer who could barely hold his briefcase together. Sheriff Tom, quietly standing in the back, didn't even need to act. Karen grabbed her purse and fled the room, humiliated. The crowd erupted into applause and jeers. The fight was over, and the aftermath? Peaceful. Gloriously, wonderfully peaceful. The HOA, now under new leadership with Linda as president, sent me a formal written apology. I framed it, hung it next to Karen's old threatening letters, a little trophy wall, Karen's house, for sale within a week. Rumor had it she moved several states away. Linda later told me she tried to join her new HOA board, but got immediately rejected when someone Googled Karen Whitmore, Crestwood Estates. Karma. Man, it's a beautiful thing. My farm thrived. The farmers' Fundays became a weekend tradition. Hay rides, live music, fresh eggs, and produce. Even Crestwood families came over regularly. They'd chat, shop, laugh, and tell me how much quieter, friendlier, and happier the neighborhood felt now. Barry, my accidental legal champion, gained a bit of a reputation. People started calling him a giant slayer. He still sends me Christmas cards, each one with a llama on it, and that old red barn, still red. The Roosters still crow at dawn, a chorus of freedom now, and right at the edge of my property facing Crestwood Estates, I put up a new hand-carved wooden sign. It reads Mitchell Farms, EST, 1923 HOA, Free Karen, Free Live. And let live, it gets a lot of smiles, sometimes even a few honks from passing cars.